To be a woman in today's society is not easy. It's not easy for men either. Honestly, in many regards, men have gotten the short stick. Men, especially white men as well too, are being pushed out of the picture and are kind of taking all of the hate. And apparently to even be white anymore is a sin, so to speak. So I believe you can identify how you want to identify. I don't think that changes your biology. No amount of hormones or surgery will do that. Welcome back to the second episode of the Mandy Freilich podcast. Because I am a busy mom and entrepreneur, there isn't a set schedule with producing these podcasts, but you can expect one about once a month. That's essentially the track that we're trying to stick with. So in future episodes, I will definitely be having more guests joining me. However, I wanted to kick off this second episode with more of a dialogue about topics that I think are very relevant to today's time. And they're also topics that few people are willing to broach just because of how society has changed. You'll have to please forgive me because I'm just getting over being sick, but I did feel like it was important to keep this episode on time. That way we can at least have some discourse about some of these very meaningful topics. Now, I'd like to begin with saying that these opinions are my own. As someone who is producing this independently, they are not a reflection of the people or the organizations that I work with, nor should anyone take away from this that I'm trying to attack anyone or make anyone feel badly. At the end of the day, I think that free speech is one of our greatest privileges and rights in this country. And my opinion is that freedom is continuously being encroached upon in a way that is very frightening, honestly. We often take various privileges for granted, and I use the word privilege with intentionality because I think it's often misused, but I do believe that that's one of the greatest gifts of being in the United States is that we have the ability to share our opinions and ideas. Due to the backlash that a lot of people are experiencing as a result of having opinions and talking about them, fewer people than ever now feel confident having conversations about a myriad of topics. They are scared of being canceled. They're scared of being called a transphobe or a bigot or a fascist or anti-Semitic. There's all these different terms that these extremist groups, I would say, I think it's the extremist demographics of these different groups essentially are using to silence other people. I'm calling this episode the one that gets me canceled because I don't care anymore about the backlash that's going to come as a result of sharing my opinions and feelings. And over the past handful of years, it's been a lot more comfortable for me to not say anything. But as I haven't been saying anything, I've been witnessing a decline in culture and the way we communicate, in people that I know and love, friends, family members, neighbors, feeling like they don't know what's to come in the future and they don't feel like they have the ability to say anything about it either. And to me, I find that to be very, very scary. And further to that, there's been this insistent feeling building over the past couple of years, which essentially spawned the Mandy Freilich podcast, because I feel that my creator, our creator, has been urging me to use my voice, to say something, to show up and to talk about these very meaningful subjects now before it's too late. And I would rather be wrong and be canceled and have people not like me versus in 5 to 10 years, wish that I had said something, wish that I had had the courage to talk about these very important subjects and more importantly, to share my experience. I'm not here today as much to throw facts around and try to compel you to believe something one way or another. I'm here to share my experience in the hopes that it reaches even one person. It hopefully inspires someone else to say, you know what, I've been having this feeling too. I think it's important that I tactfully and compassionately speak out. And hopefully at the end of the day, more conversation can come as a result of this. There have been numerous instances in the past couple of years where I've tried to have conversations with people, more specific to the trans community, and any dissenting opinion whatsoever has been labeled as just transphobic and fascist. And that's been one of the first introductions to this new way of thinking with the younger generations and just how society is shifting generally, and thinking that if you don't agree, you don't get a voice. Furthermore, if you don't agree, there is something wrong with you and you should be silenced. I wholeheartedly disagree with that. That's why I'm here. So I am putting myself out and saying that there are a handful of topics that are taboo, I guess, that people say you shouldn't talk about that, but we need to talk about it, or else society is going to continue to decline. Our relationships are going to continue to decline. More and more people, specifically women, are going to suffer as a result of staying silent. And I can't allow that anymore. So perhaps no one listens to this. Perhaps a few people do. At the end of the day, my intention is to meet you halfway, to show you that it's okay to have differing opinions. It's okay to talk about the hard stuff. It's okay to put yourself out there. And at the end of the day, we can still be neighbors and have good relations, even if we don't 100% agree on the same topics. Okay, so that's my preface to this. Again, thank you for your patience with me as I'm getting over being sick, but there's no better time than the present to really dive into some of these hard discussions. And I'm going to get very real and honest. I'm going to open up about some things that I personally would probably prefer to keep hidden, I guess, silent, private, not hidden as much as I don't think we need to air out our dirty laundry, right? But at the end of the day, if they have meaningful consequences and have the potential to help someone else, it's worth talking about. So that is the preface to this. I think that in today's culture, it's becoming very common to trauma dump, specifically on TikTok, right? Oh, this happened to me. And what's happened as a result of this behavior of pointing out ways in which we are victims is we have bonded over our wounds, so to speak. There has been an emergence of woundology. This happened to me, therefore I can relate to you because that happened to you. Now we're victims. Now somebody owes us something. Now there's this step out of my control, and I do not subscribe to that narrative. I think that the experiences we have and the difficulties that arise out of those experiences are meant to teach us. And if we don't learn and we don't take that opportunity to stand on our 2 feet and actually become stronger from that experience, it's a wasted opportunity. And when we become victims and we expect somebody else to save us, the government for most people, then it puts us in a very compromised position where we lose our autonomy, lose our freedom, we lose the ability to think critically and plan for our futures in ways that are actually going to fulfill us individually and our families and collectively as a society. So I guess one of the first things I'd want to say is if you feel like you are a victim, something's happened to you, I empathize. I absolutely do. There's been many things in my life where I could have just rolled over and said, you know what, I give up. I'm done. The difference is I truly believe, once again, that those experiences are meant to help us grow. And I also believe that there's always a solution for whatever problem ails you. Whether you're dealing with a chronic illness or a lover that's cheating on you, or maybe a difficult relationship with another family member, or you're trying to get ahead with work and you just don't know how to do it, there are solutions. There are pathways forward. You have all of the power in the world and the ability to change your circumstances. Most people just don't want to do that, though, because it takes work. It takes self-awareness. It takes the willingness to adopt an attitude that if you really want something, you can do it. You can learn new skills, and with the internet, that's easier than ever nowadays. A lot of those skills can be learned for free. You can work really hard. Working hard is a very big part of the equation, and you can stay persistent. And if you do that, for 80% of people, they will change their circumstances and they will change their lives. So I don't believe in this victim mentality that the world is happening to you and that you need to give up and give all your freedom and control to the government. I think that each of us needs to buck up and we need to get stronger. We need to be adaptable. And at the end of the day, we need to stop having such soft skins, essentially. Everyone is so concerned over words and what someone said, and they think that the world needs to be this cushy place that provides equality for all, and there shouldn't be any hardship whatsoever, and there shouldn't be any challenge. That's not real life. Life is tough, and so many circumstances are out of your control. What you can control is how you respond and how you prepare. And you do that through educating yourself, by learning from other people, by seeing the paths that other people take, by saying, I'm going to take this, I'm going to take this, I'm going to apply it to my life, and by being persistent, developing resilience. It's not easy, but it is worth it, and it is the only way to live life. We cannot give up our freedom and our autonomy. Like, if there's anything that probably gets stressed today, it's that. We need to fight for the ability to have a voice, to talk about things, to try and build better, and to not let the loud-mouthed minority, which are part of the extremes, are basically saying the same thing, yelling at each other, and trying to silence the rest of the people, cannot let them shape the way society moves forward. So one thing in terms of just trying to convey that you have power. And I've heard people say, well, what power do I have? I have no power. That's an interesting topic on itself. I think that we are limited. We have a limited capacity as humans, but we are not just humans. We are, as you probably heard before, spiritual beings having a human experience. And I think spirituality trumps all in understanding that there is more to life. There is a greater piece of all of us that we all stem from, and that is true power. And when we align to that, incredible things can happen. It's getting chills even talking about it, because aligning and following God's plan has been the most instrumental and incredible catalyst in my life. There have been many times that I've been called to do things, such as this podcast, where I was kicking and screaming, I don't want to do it. But there's insistent feeling that said, no, you need to show up and you need to do this, because A, B, C, D, E, F, all these things that you're wanting to accomplish in your life, that's doable, but it needs to be part of my plan. It needs to be part of the greater plan. It needs to give back. And at the end of the day, if we can stay grounded as people, and we can have that spiritual relationship, and we can have clarity in just the big picture, and that we are meant to coexist and thrive together, it changes everything. Society's mentality today is that everything has to be put into boxes. Everything has to be divided. It's us versus them. It's white versus black. It's trans versus not trans. And it doesn't matter. My personal opinion is you can do whatever that you want to do. Do whatever you want to do, as long as you're not hurting other people. And that's where some of my discussion points come in today, because yes, I believe you should do what you want to do. I don't always agree with it. And that's a different opinion with a lot of people. They think you should accept me fully for who I am. But walking the Christian path, that's not the path that I've set out on. I can love you, I can pray for you, and I can see all of the potential in you. But I can also have discernment and see that certain life choices are not wise, and they're going to lead you down a path of destruction. Bible reference or not. It's just history and experience and understanding patterns and how things work out. And to say to anyone that if you disagree with me, then you obviously aren't a friend, or, you can't talk to anymore, I think is a very shallow and closed-minded way to approach life. I don't think it gets us anywhere. In fact, some of my favorite relationships are with people who don't agree with me on a lot of things. And it's so curious, because I have a very colorful and different background. And I think I'll dive into that now in terms of I'm not ordinary, in the sense that I grew up conservative Catholic. Okay. And as soon as I was able to graduate, I did. I left South Dakota and I went and became a vegan chef. And I lived and worked in Arizona for a while. And I bypassed the traditional college thing for a while. Ended up getting an internship in Costa Rica, working as a chef at a holistic nutrition center. And my entire worldview was changed, because there had been this understanding that life has to be a certain way and you have to follow a specific track. And all of a sudden it was derailed, and I was living this very alternative lifestyle. Became very liberal, was vegan for 8 years, traveled and lived abroad in holistic healing centers for about 5 years, and developed a totally different worldview than a lot of people, from the sense of, yes, I believe in inclusivity. I believe in being able to thrive with your neighbor globally, and the importance of giving back, all these different things, really lovely values that I think a lot of liberal people try to adhere to. The spectrum has changed a lot, and honestly, I don't really care for Democratic or liberal. It doesn't matter to me. But at the end of the day, had that experience, had a lot of mind-opening experiences as well, too, living in the jungle, trying various types of medicines. And as a result, I think I'll dive into this in the future, but a very different perspective on spirituality. And it took me quite a while. It's taken me 30 years now total to formulate a very grounded opinion of how I'm meant to live in this life and what actually makes sense. And it's hard, because I think there's a level of mental warfare that each of us is going through. Not only is the media lying to you, but the food that you're eating, for the most part, probably isn't the healthiest for you. The foods that are subsidized are generally intended to feed animals, and they're low quality, like corn and wheat, and they create more inflammation. And then a lot of those are used in a lot of the processed foods that create more inflammation as well, too, contributing to a cycle of disease. And then because of how that system is set up, it makes it difficult for people to get access to healthy food. And then, of course, the modern medical system primarily teaches Band-Aid solutions. Now, emergency medicine is amazing, don't get me wrong. And I'm grateful for things like antibiotics and the ability to use tools like So friends, anti-nausea medication, which I'm using today, thank goodness, or else I wouldn't be here. But that said, we have to look at the root cause, just root cause of everything in life, whether it be political or health related or relationship based or whatever it is we're dealing with. We need to have a holistic understanding and viewpoint of where we've been so that we can develop a plan to move forward. And finishing the track that I was on before as well too, I ended up, after I spent some time in Kenya, Africa, moving back to the US, met my husband. We traveled around the US a bit more. After we moved back to South Dakota, that's when things shifted again. I found myself going from liberal, vegan, granola crunchy type person to understanding that there is balance within it all. And now we're hunters. We try to primarily live off grid. We're attempting to be self-sufficient. We're going to be homeschooling. And you probably got from the opener of this podcast, believe in freedom and autonomy. I don't believe in government oversight. I think that the government is largely mismanaged. I think it's run like a criminal organization. The laundering of the money alone is absolutely abhorrent, and the lack of accountability by politicians who have been elected is problematic, to say the least. So the system itself needs work. Do I not believe in the system? No, but I do think that there needs to be an overhaul, so to speak, so that it can actually work for the people. And there's a lot more I could say on that. But essentially, I've come full circle so that now, spiritually, my beliefs have returned to Christianity. And actually, I'm a practicing Catholic as well, too. I never thought that would happen in a million years. I always thought that Catholics were maybe cult-like. I don't know, it took me a while to really feel, but something beautiful happened in the last couple of years, and I've witnessed it in my friends, families, and clients as well, too. And that has been this resurgence and this calling to return to the church, whatever church, Christian-wise, that calls to these people, and it can vary. For me, it was Catholicism. And interestingly, logically, I said, I don't know, I'm doing that. It doesn't make sense. And it's so funny because the other people I've spoken with as well too, they had a very similar story as well too, but they said it just felt right. And they went back and they got baptized and they repented. And now Jesus and the Holy Spirit and God are working through their lives in magnificent ways. And it's counterculture to follow Christianity. It's counterculture to want freedom and autonomy. It's considered conspiracy theorists to question anything. And that's once again why I felt like I just had to do this podcast. Like, I would rather spend my time hanging out with my family or working or creating something, but I have to see something, because now you can't talk about so many different topics without being labeled a nutcase or a conspiracy theorist or what have you. And having my backgrounds in holistic health before I transitioned back to, went to school and started working in business and finance, it's given me a very different worldview so that I have different perspectives on all of this. I understand where liberals come from. I fully understand where like conservative Republicans come from now as well too. At the end of the day, the majority of the people I speak with, they're pretty normal. They're 60 to 80% of people, I think, are in the camp of, yeah, you can do what you want to do as long as it doesn't hurt me or my family, right? And then of course, it's all kind of blown out of proportion by the media, and the loudest mouths tend to dominate social media and also what the news covers. Not even talking about the fact that the news is primarily, it's a monopoly as well too. It's like the food. Everything is controlled by a very small handful of organizations. BlackRock, Vanguard, go down that rabbit hole. Anyways, so the point here I'm making is that I don't expect people to fully agree with things I'm saying, but I think that my interesting, slightly colorful backgrounds and having the contrast throughout the whole spectrum can lend some insight to some of these different topics. And again, my intention isn't to make anyone feel upset. It's not to make anyone feel less than. I believe in you. I fully love you. I think you're worthy of love, and I want the best for you. I think we get there by having meaningful conversations and by talking about the really hard stuff. So, okay, I promise to get kind of vulnerable in this one as well too. So might as well, I guess, just dive into to be a woman in today's society is not easy. It's not easy for men either, honestly. In many regards, men have gotten the short stick. Men, especially white men as well too, are being pushed out of the picture and are kind of taking all of the hate. And apparently to even be white anymore is a sin, so to speak. So I believe you can identify how you want to identify. I don't think that changes your biology. No amount of hormones or surgery will do that. That's okay. You can identify as a woman if you want to. Identify as a man if you want to. That's fine. I'm just not going to try and rewrite biology or the books on this, okay? So that's where I stand on that. It's all kind of blow. Alrighty, and today's podcast is sponsored by Amari Global, specifically the Happy Juice. Now, you might have seen me talking about Happy Juice in the past, but it is a delicious concoction developed by Amari Global that is scientifically proven to help you feel happier. Okay, so it's all about improving your gut health. And I'll put some statistics in the comments here or in the description about why it's so beneficial. Increases serotonin, helps increase your gut health. It basically helps to repair the gut-brain axis. And as a result, you get more energy, you just have better mood levels, and you're able to just keep your cool just a little bit better when life happens. And I mean, there's a lot that you need to keep your cool with in life nowadays. So if you'd like to learn more about it, please visit the link down below. You can get a discount off your first order as well too, 10% by using the code. And at the end of the day, if you have any questions, please do let me know. And this one as well too. So might as well, I guess, just dive into to be a woman in today's society is not easy. It's not easy for men either. Honestly, in many regards, men have gotten the short stick. Men, especially white men as well too, are being pushed out of the picture and are kind of taking all of the hate. And apparently to even be white anymore is a sin, so to speak. So I believe you can identify how you want to identify. I don't think that changes your biology. No amount of hormones or surgery will do that. That's okay. You can identify as a woman if you want to. You can identify as a man if you want to. That's fine. I'm just not going to try and rewrite biology. Now, when I talk about women here, I'm primarily talking about biological women. I'm not trying to be exclusive and say that those who feel more feminine tendencies for urges or things of that nature aren't relevant to this discussion, but this discussion is more related to biological women. Again, I love you. I'm not trying to offend anyone, just going very straightforward and simple here. One of the biggest myths that women have been taught is that being a boss babe is what it's all about. I was sold it as well too. I believed it. So growing up, some of my idols were like Charlize Theron and anything. Oh my gosh, so many different things. Lara Croft, Tomb Raider, all these just badass women. And their depictions of just being able to do it all, not necessarily needing a man, being adventurous, nothing wrong with that whatsoever. But that notion I have seen be perpetuated throughout the years, specifically through media, and really diminishing the role that men play in our society. And I think that's had negative effects. What we're seeing now is women who don't value men, women who don't see the importance of having a good, faithful, loving man in their lives, nor do they see the importance of having a family. Now, if you're under the age of 24, 25, and you're a female, you're probably not interested in having a family. I did not think I was interested at having a family at all. I didn't want kids. And then something happened at age 24 and I went, oh my gosh, that baby is really cute. And by that time I was with my husband. We waited 5 years before we got married. And then we just had our first baby last year. And I'm actually pregnant with our second right now. So again, even more relevance to having these discussions, because now these conversations don't just affect me, they affect future generations and specifically our kids that we're raising right now. I think it's a huge disservice to women to sell them this notion that they need to do it all and that they don't need to think about having a family. It's sad because having so many, I'm neurodivergent, and having a lot of different talents and skills has given me a lot in my life. I've learned how to cook and to write and to build products and build businesses, and have been able to travel and do all these really wonderful things. And what I found when I became a mother was that all of these different skills and interests so perfectly fit into the role of being a mother and a wife and being able to provide for my family in that way. For instance, cooking. I love to cook. I enjoyed my time working at some restaurants. I didn't like being there 8 to 10 hours a day, cooking the same thing over and over again, right? But I love cooking, I love sharing, and I love baking, and I love nourishing my family. I like doing it on a smaller scale. I like being creative. And for years, there's been this desire to start a food business, but it hasn't really felt right. And then as I have gotten the privilege of seeing my son grow older and start to get an appetite, really big appetite, it's become more and more fun to cook for my family. And that's just one example. And what I found lately is that we are made to be a nurturer. We're made to have this maternal instinct. And when we try to displace that through a variety of different means by trying to nurture a business or create full independence or create a brand that makes us feel good, it's never going to be fully satisfying. I've never found the level of satisfaction in any of the businesses I started or any of the roles that I've had as I've had being a mother. And it's weird to think, because there's been times in the past where I couldn't stop, like, just working or creating. It was this drive. I just need to keep going. And being a mother, being able to slow down, just hold my baby and watch him sleep has brought me some of the greatest peace in the world. And I have friends who they're a bit older now, they're in their 40s and their 50s, and they didn't think they wanted kids earlier. And now they feel like they're missing out on that experience because they were also sold a similar lie in the sense of you can have it all without kids, without family. And there's something so beautiful about being able to cultivate a family, have a truly healthy, rewarding, loyal, faithful marriage, a monogamous marriage specifically as well too, and having the opportunity to grow something that's going to outlast you. Your legacy isn't in your business or your brand. Your legacy is in the people around you and what you are giving back. And that's a fundamental awareness that I've had as a result of being able to bring life into this world. It's not about any of the books I write. It's not about any of these podcasts. It's literally about the humans I'm helping to create and how I'm treating my family and what I'm able to share with people and nurture in other people as well too. So I think there's more to say on that, but I think that women have primarily been sold a lie, and young women specifically as well too. They don't have a very grounded perception on maybe what to look for in a partner, in a mate, and they're willing to just give up some of their most special gifts to random strangers as a result of wanting to feel loved and have that wholesomeness. Or they're trying to cheat the system and bypass the long road, which is developing a relationship, really getting to know a partner, develop solid foundation, have the financial security as well too, before deciding to bring life into this world. And I've witnessed it in other ways in which, women will say, okay, well, this is my husband. I just got married, and then they get pregnant, and then they realize they know nothing about each other. He's somewhat abusive. She's not set up whatsoever, and leaves them in an even more compromised position. And how this relates to societal implications overall is that we're actively watching the dismantling of the nuclear family and the displacement of having two loving parents raising their kids. I'm not even talking about gender. I don't care. Two loving parents raising their kids, spending time with them, and wanting to be involved. And I think one of the worst things that we did as well too, societally, is that we basically encourage moms to leave the family and go work and then put their kids in daycare. And it's put us into this position where, economically, a lot of people have to do that now. I totally get it. But we're not present for our kids. We're not actually nurturing them in the ways that we want. It's leaving this hole in a lot of people as well too, because they're not able to be there and be present for their kids. And that's one of the most rewarding things there is in life. So there's a lot of factors that affect that, but the lack of awareness and emphasis on being able to grow and nurture a family, I think, is overall hurting us culturally. Sidestepping to that is a topic of, oh my gosh, abortion. Okay, so here we go. Everyone has an opinion on this. My opinion used to be pro-choice. And the reason it's not is because I have had the experience of going through that. And what a lot of women aren't cognizant of when they decide to make that choice is that there is a true, living, beautiful being inside them. Largely out of fear and pressure is the reason most people have abortion, or they're trying to use it as a birth control method. I'm not addressing the minority of folks who maybe are pregnant through rape or an abusive situation. I think that's another topic for another time. I'm talking about the majority of people who use it as a plan B, essentially. And the reason it's a big issue, in my opinion, is because we don't value life culturally. We treat it's very confusing for me, because if I were to ask you, okay, there's a woman and she's pregnant, she's 5 months pregnant, and she's murdered. Would you count that as a double homicide? Most people, according to the polls, would say yes. They would say yes. However, if that woman elects to have that child aborted, well, now it's her choice, okay? So there's disconnect there. There's disconnect from the perspective of a couple years ago, vaccines were mandated, and you were not allowed to leave your house. You weren't allowed to go to restaurants. You weren't allowed to work in a lot of different situations if you did not have the jab. People did not have control or any say over what was done to their body. Yet we advocate for women to have full control and say over their body, even when it does affect another living being. And if you say, oh, well, just a fetus, right? Well, what is fetus? It's a Latin word for baby. Okay, just because it's not fully developed doesn't make it any less human. And with a heartbeat as soon as 4 to 6 weeks, it is a living, breathing human. Breathing in the sense that you and I are breathing right now, but you get what I mean. All of this is important. There's more to go into it. My stance specifically stems from my experience. like I said, I'm not really here to throw around facts today. I'm here to talk about experience and opinions. And again, this is the episode that gets me canceled. But probably one of the most shameful thing I've ever done in my life was to have an abortion. And how it changed me, though, and I think the importance of it was to be able to speak out about it. Because a lot of people, a lot of women, they don't think anything of it. They just think, I need to get this done. I need to be done with it. I need to get this off my mind because it's stressing me out, right? What am I going to do? I can't provide for this or can't do this, yada, yada, yada. All these different excuses, or I didn't mean to, or I didn't use protection or whatever. I had mine at 6 weeks. It was very early, which to me it seemed somewhat morally okay because it was early enough. There was already a heartbeat. And what I recall from this very, very painful experience, part of my punishment to myself was no pain meds whatsoever, was that there was this life force flowing through me. And I didn't observe it until it was gone, until I felt it being cut. And that was the most traumatic thing that came out of that. Like I said, I'm ashamed of this. 65 million babies have been aborted in the US. That's a choice. It's a choice that's being made. And so many women, they think that they're going to be better off as a result of that decision. And actually, it mentally and emotionally scars them. In some cases, it might actually reduce their fertility in the future. And the reality of it is that it is murder. So how can we say that you don't have autonomy over your body when it comes to something like vaccinations, but we can say that you have autonomy when it comes to killing something that is alive? There's a disconnect there. I don't agree with it. And I think that abortion is an effect of not valuing life. We don't value life in the womb, and people don't value life when people are fully grown either. This level of separation and division that's being perpetuated right now is unhealthy. It's not helping anyone. You can have your preconceived notions about how people behave and why they might have the motivations that they do, but you do not know who that person is. And each of us, regardless of our skin color or our background, has so many different experiences and layers to us that we can't just judge at face value, and we can't just put everyone into boxes and say that because this person is like this or they're like that makes them bad, or we have any idea of what they're actually going through or the repercussions of what they might do. So that's something that I've been wanting to say for a while, kind of regretfully, to be honest, but it's been working its way out for some time. Back to what I was talking about when I started this podcast, I don't think the experiences that we choose and the hands that life deals us give us the right to be victims or to define ourselves, create an identity because of that hardship. I feel like we are given an opportunity to become adaptable and decide how to move forward. And most importantly, how to use those really bad experiences to create something good out of it, to shed light on a topic, to help someone, to educate, or maybe even just create a better path for ourselves. So that's the goal here. It's really interesting having that contrast. That contrast is everything. It gives you perspective. And I think we just have to be open-minded. We have to be willing to think outside of the box and say, you know what, maybe I don't know everything. And I'm fully willing to admit that I don't know everything. There's so much I wish I learned. I wish I read more books. Wish I wasn't always so busy with work and I could do more of that. Or when I wasn't doing that, I'm cooking and cleaning all the time, but it's worth it. And it's that season of life is what I'm in right now. But, just something's got to give. And that's really what I've been feeling lately is we can't continue to allow society to meander down the path that it is. There's a lot of corruption. There's a lot of delusion. There's a lot of mental illness. And I think a lot of that was born out of COVID and the social isolation and just the bombardment of propaganda in so many different forms. If you are not taking the time to ground yourself physically and help yourself be sustained mentally and emotionally, it's going to be pretty difficult out there for you. You might really identify with a lot of the madness that is being circulated. And I think the best antidote to that is God, getting in nature and being around people who are going to call you out and stuff. That's why your family matters, okay? If your family, love them or hate them, they're going to call different shades out. I love the quote, I can't even think off the top of my head who said that, but if you think you're enlightened, go spend some time with your family, right? I love my family. They're great, but we're all who we are. So those are a couple of heavy topics I want to talk about. There's even more probably to talk about. I think the last one I want to end on today has to do with health care. Okay, women's health specifically. I'm very, very passionate about holistic health care because of my background. So when I was growing up, I suffered from several eating disorders and oh my gosh, so much self-loathing. I had difficulty breathing. I was overweight, and I just didn't feel good in my body. And I was very, very depressed. It wasn't great. Okay. High school, I ended up developing some eating disorders, and my way forward out of that, thank goodness, was God intervening. I literally heard a voice the last time I purged, and it said, "You're dead." And I physically could not force myself to purge after that point. It was honestly odd, but it was amazing. And I knew from that point forward, I had to figure out how to live with myself. And so I dove into the world of holistic nutrition. And I learned that, as Hippocrates said, the founder of modern day medicine, food can be our medicine. Okay. Food is full of a diverse amount of nutrients and minerals. It has fiber. If we really take into consideration what we eat and we just try to eat cleaner, less processed food, less low quality foods, maybe let's say like animal meats with hormones and antibiotics and low quality ingredients like various preservatives stuffed into them, it can make a world of difference in how you feel. It also affects you mentally and emotionally, and believe it or not, spiritually as well too. So some of my biggest breakthroughs were having that awareness that, oh my gosh, just by changing out what I eat, and most importantly, taking out some of the crap from my diet, I felt a lot better. It was a lot easier to sustain a healthy weight. And even today, like I'm not claiming to be like super fit and healthy all the time, but I was back to my baby weight or pre-baby weight within 4 or 5 months or so. And I barely work out because I barely have the time. I'd love to do more of that, but I'll just be honest. And the nutrition was key. So I think there's a lot to say there. The other thing about nutrition and overall wellness in the body, specifically as it pertains to women, is that hormone balance is highly, highly important. And a lot of people have excess cortisol in their bodies from stress, which exacerbates inflammation and can just make whatever disease essentially that runs within your body more likely to occur. So from an epigenetics perspective, your environment, the foods you eat, what you put on your skin, even the way you think, all affects your health as well too. What people aren't being told is that there's an excess of estrogen in our environment and also the foods that we eat. Estrogen dominance is linked to a handful of diseases of affluence, whether it be a heart disease or breast cancer, or even the feminization of men as well too. And we know that testosterone levels have decreased in our society as well too. So paying attention to the food that you eat really makes a world of difference. And unfortunately, we're not being taught about this by the doctors, the physicians that should be in positions where they are more effectively helping people. But what I witness all the time is people go in to speak with a physician. They say, I'm having these issues and I don't know what's going on. That physician, because the medical system has become so industrialized, they say, well, I think it's this thing. And they write a prescription and they move on because they're incentivized to write prescriptions because of the kickbacks they get from the pharmaceutical companies. It's very rare that you find a doctor that actually wants to look at the entire picture. More often than not, they're functional medicine doctors. And there's some really great ones out there, which combine a combination of allopathic with naturopathy. And I think that they're some of the best physicians that you could see if you are going to try and find someone, because they can identify some of the root causes of what's actually going on. And they can give you recommendations from a hormonal balancing perspective to dietary requirements to maybe even some different prescriptions that could help as well too. But it's just very much lacking in our society. So I guess main takeaway is you've clearly gotten from me that I have faith in the system, but I do think that there needs to be quite a bit of remediation in how it's organized and structured, how we incentivize everyone from our financial advisors to our doctors to our politicians to act in alignment with what the public actually needs. If you've been following current events, you're well aware that the current establishment does not do that whatsoever. I mean, from sending billions of dollars, essentially laundering it overseas for war, to allowing thousands of people in every day that are undocumented and giving them more opportunity than citizens in this country that are struggling themselves. It's madness. And I think just it's enough is enough. The majority of the people I meet, like I said, they just want to make sure that their families are provided for and that they don't have to be concerned in terms of if their neighbors are okay or if they can afford groceries this week or if they have to choose their prescription pills over their groceries. I don't think it's too much to ask for, but you know what really changes this is you getting involved in the conversation, you having the courage to speak up and compassionately and tactfully share your voice and get more involved. in discussions, whether it be political movements or just trying to do some good in your community, or even putting yourself out on a limb like I'm doing and trying to speak about topics that definitely will rub someone the wrong way. If you do what the masses want, you're going to be unhappy. That's kind of my opinion on all of it. Do you seek autonomy and freedom, become self-sufficient if you can, and at the end of the day, just try to do good, right? Like we all need to coexist together. We all deserve an opportunity to be able to provide for our families and not have to worry about where the next meal will come from, or if our neighbor down the road needs help just because economically they're not in a situation where they can keep up with inflation, or they're not able to go out because of lockdown, or et cetera, et cetera. So we are definitely living through a very interesting time. It's all about weathering the storm right now and trying to keep the boat going in the right direction. This is my perspective on it. Trying to do my part by speaking out a little bit. And at the end of the day, if I did offend you, I'd love to hear from you. Or if I didn't offend you, I'd love to hear from you too. Probably prefer the latter, actually. But either way, the goal here is to have conversations, to have discourse. If there's something you think you could teach me about that maybe I don't know as much about, and you think that I have a differing opinion, I'm open to it. I'm not going to claim I have a lot of time to spend on discussing some of these different topics, but I'm willing to read through what you have and keep an open mind. At the end of the day, I think that's all we can do. We can only have an open mind and try to weather the storm together. That's what we have to do. So thank you for taking the time to tune into this podcast. I really appreciate it. We talked about a few different topics that I'd love your feedback on. And in the future, I'll have some more guests on as well too, kind of get their perspectives on some of these different meaningful topics as well. But I wanted to just give a little bit more background about who I am, why I'm talking about this, the purpose of this podcast. And at the end of the day, it's just know that it's driven from love. It's produced from a means of trying to help. And I would rather be wrong and canceled than silent, and in 5 to 10 years wish that I had said something. So thank you. If you could like this video, subscribe to Substack, subscribe to YouTube, I'd really appreciate it. Help support my channel. Mostly they're not in a situation where they can keep up with inflation, or they're not able to go out because of lockdown, or et cetera, et cetera. So we are definitely living through a very interesting time. It's all about weathering the storm right now and trying to keep the boat going in the right direction. This is my perspective on it. Trying to do my part by speaking out a little bit. And at the end of the day, if I did offend you, I'd love to hear from you. Or if I didn't offend you, I'd love to hear from you too. Probably prefer the latter, actually. But either way, the goal here is to have conversations, to have discourse. If there's something you think you could teach me about that maybe I don't know as much about, and you think that I have a differing opinion, I'm open to it. I'm not going to claim I have a lot of time to spend on discussing some of these different topics, but I'm willing to read through what you have and keep an open mind. At the end of the day, I think that's all we can do. We can only have an open mind and try to weather the storm together. That's what we have to do. So thank you for taking the time to tune into this podcast. I really appreciate it. We talked about a few different topics that I'd love your feedback on. And in the future, I'll have some more guests on as well too, kind of get their perspectives on some of these different meaningful topics as well. But I wanted to just give a little bit more background about who I am, why I'm talking about this, the purpose of this podcast. And at the end of the day, it's just know that it's driven from love. It's produced from a means of trying to help. And I would rather be wrong and canceled than silent, and in 5 to 10 years wish that I had said something. So thank you. If you could like this video, subscribe to Substack, subscribe to YouTube, I'd really appreciate it. Help support my channel.